Everyone, in this video, we will see one of the Azure service called Azure Front Door. This is one of the extensively used service. Let's see what is it and how we can implement for our day-to-day workload. Okay, as a book's definition, it is like Azure Front Door is Microsoft's global, scalable, and secure entry point for delivering your application content. So think of it as a layer 7 load balancer, which will be balancing the load based on HTTP or HTTPS request. Not just that, it will also act like a CDN content delivery network. So these two are the two main functionalities of front door. But beyond that, also we have other functionalities as well. But this video, we will be seeing only about these two things in detail. Okay, what exactly this global load balancer means? See, just think of this particular image. Okay. And I have a workload which is based on an app service running on two different regions. One is in central US and another one is in East US. And now these two are added as an origin or a backend for the front door. Now, users will be accessing this particular front door, and whereas this particular front door will be acting like a load balancer between the multiple services running in the backend. So either the service from or the resource which is running on the central US will be responding or the East US will be responding. And that's how this particular front door will be balancing the load among these two available. Not just this, like if we want, even we can add some on-prem workload also. In this image, I just used app services. Maybe we can even use some other services like application load balancer, an IP address. Let's say that you are running a VM in central US and that IP address also can be tagged. And let's say that you are running a VM in East US, even that application address, a VM's address also can be tagged. Either it can be an app service or an application gateway, a VM. So quite a lot of types of origins we can use. But according to this diagram, we are using app services. Right. So whenever a customer is trying to access through any of mean, and this load balancer will be balancing the load among two different regions. And that is why it is called global load balancer. There is another load balancer that is a regional one, and which will be balancing the load among the workload running in the same region. But this front door will be balancing the load among multiple regions. So this is one main functionality of this particular front door. One more, that's about CDN. So when we talk about CDN, this Azure Front Door is Microsoft's advanced cloud content delivery network, we can say. It is designed for providing fast, reliable, and secure access to your application. And how it will do. For that, let me just take you to another diagram. So if you see in this diagram, let me explain what exactly we have here. So we have our workload running in two regions. One is East US, another one is West US. And if you see, we have our application running on two virtual machine. And to balance the load among these two virtual machines, we have an application gateway here. And this application gateway is added as a origin to front door. Okay, so one of the origin for the front door is this application gateway. And one more similar setup, we have it in West US as well. And if you see in West US, we have two VM running and those two are load balanced using application gateway. And again, this application gateway is attached to this particular front door. So basically, there are two different places load balancing is taking place. One at the front door level. So front door will decide the nearest region for the user. So I'll come to that user part later. So let's say that both are the origin, right? So which is attached to this front door. And on any request, front door may choose this particular region which will be serving the purpose. So what happens, this front door will send that request or redirect the request to this region. And again, we have an application load balancer and that will load balance among the multiple VMs in the regional level. But this load balancing, what is done at this front door is the global level, not just that. So you might have heard that we have edge locations. Usually we call it as a POP, point of presence. And this point of presence is everywhere throughout the world. Okay, like let's say that a user is trying to connect to Azure cloud from India, then he will be connected to the nearest POP for Indian region. And if somebody is trying to connect from Singapore, and they will be connected to the nearest POP, which is near to the Singapore region. And from there, the traffic will be on Microsoft's backbone network, we can say. And that's how this front door will load balance. But what is next is this CDN, right? Not just that. So maybe on the first request, or maybe the first user request, okay, content will be delivered from the origin, okay. And later and onwards, the same content can be cached here in the POP. So first time it fetches the content, and then the second time it will not just only serve the user, it will keep the content here. It will cache the content. And when the next user, the subsequent user comes for the same content, and then for that user, the front door need not go and fetch the data from either East US or West US. It can deliver the content from POP itself. And that we can get to know in this particular image. Let's say that we have a user and trying to connect to this particular front door. The TCP connection will take place, TLS certificate will be exchanged and verified, and then the first request of user will come into the front door. So usually the front door will be running on all the POPs. And once the request is coming here, obviously this is the first time, and there is no any content related to what user is requesting is available in this particular POP. So what front door does, it will send or redirect the request to either East US and West US. It purely depends upon the user locality. If user is near to East US, then he will be redirected to East US. And if the users are from West US, then he will be directed to the West US like that. Let's assume that the front door is redirecting the request to East US resources. And again, here there is a load balancer application gateway, and that will be balancing the load. And one of the VM will definitely respond to that. So let's say that this VM is responding with some content, and that content will be given to the user. So this communication will happen like this. So not just the content will be given to the user, even the content gets cached here. So now let's imagine that one more user is coming for the same application. In that case, what happens? This user will again set up the TCP, TLS, and then send the request. And then the response can come to this user immediately from this particular POP itself. So the connection length is very short here. It need not go again up through multiple servers or routers and reaching the destination and getting the result back and delivering it to the user. So that's how this front door uses the POP or edge location to cache the content. And once the content is cached, not just two, even multiple user requests can be served from here itself. And let's say that there is one more user trying to connect from other region. Let me use my whiteboard. Let's say that one more user is trying to connect. Let's say he is trying to connect to this particular POP. So initially the TCP connection will be set up and TLS certificate will be exchanged, and then the request will go. If this is the first time this particular POP location is getting a request for one resource, and if it is not available, if that resource is not cached here, so maybe the request will be sent to this particular VM through this application gateway. So VM response, and the content will be given to the user. Also, the content will be cached here. So this will happen for the first user. Subsequent users, second user and onwards can get data for the same data much faster because the content is already here and that can be delivered to that user. So these are the two main purpose of this particular front door. One is load balancing and another one is content delivery network. And it will reduce the latency of user accessing the resources. Why it is global load balancer? What if, let's say that this entire region is down? So in such cases, load balancer, the front door will come to know automatically that this region which was serving a request is not responding. So now what happens? This front door will be redirecting all the requests to the available region. So this West US region resources are available, and all the subsequent requests may be sent here. If that content is already cached, fine, it will deliver. If let's say that the third user is coming in and he's trying to request a resource which these two users never requested, in such cases, it has to go to the backend and get the data. So if this system is down or this entire region is down, then the request will be redirected to the region which is available up and running. So that's how the front door works. Yeah. So far we saw like how the front door helps us in delivering your application content, right? So now let's go and do a small demo. So I'll be just creating two app services. I'll just try to imitate this particular diagram. Let me pull this diagram down. Okay, I'll be creating two web apps or app services, we can say. One maybe in central US, another one is in East US. Okay, we can choose any two region, that's up to us. And after creating, we will go and create the front door. The front door is a global load balancer as well as CDN, right? CDN based service. So we will create a front door. While creating front door, we will attach these two as a origin group. So this is an origin group. Inside this origin group, you can have multiple origin, resource origin, right? Or services getting attached to this particular front end. And once this is done, then this front door will be also giving me a FQDN. Okay, so this fully qualified domain name will be exposed to the external user. Let's say that this is internet. All the user need one address, right, to access this particular service. So we should not give the user multiple endpoint, telling them access any endpoint. If that endpoint is not working, try to check the other one. We can't say that. So we need to give the users our service a single endpoint, and that is also provided by this front door itself. So a fully qualified domain name will be coming. If we want, we can even map this fully qualified, the default one which is given by the Azure, with our own one using some DNS setup. So that will take a long route. But today we will just see how to use the same FQDN and circulate this to all the users. So users will be accessing this service through this FQDN, and this FQDN will be balancing the load. Okay. And also it caches some content which is used frequently. Okay, for that, these two are the different services we need to create. Let's go and create first two app services. For that, let me access my Azure portal. Let me go to, okay, let me search for app services. I'm creating my first app service. Right now, I don't have any app service. Let's go and create the first web app. And let me create a new resource group. Let's call it as Edu and say okay. I give it a name. I'm just giving my service name. Okay, my service name one, let it be. And then the runtime stack, it can be any. So runtime stack means, so you are creating an app service, right? So app service means it's a web app. It is going to run some application. Let's imagine that you're having a .NET application. In that case, you choose .NET runtime. And if you're having a Java application, then you choose Java runtime. Node application, then Node. So almost all the runtimes are supported. If in case your runtime is not supported here, we can just make it as a container and then we can use it. But right now, I'll just go simply with .NET LTS. Imagine that we have an application and that application I want to run in this app service, and that application needs runtime engine that is .NET 8, and let it be Windows, and which region I want to create, let it be Central US. Okay, and then a default app service plan gets created. I'll just go with that. Fine, and that's it. So basic default web application code also will be added. So we are not going that level. Okay. If I want, I can push my own application code to this particular web app. Okay, that's possible. But anyways, I'll just create, I'll test this with the default application code itself. Meanwhile, when this first web app is getting created, let me go and create second web app in East US region. Okay, let me duplicate this tab. In here, Azure, go to App Services, create the second web app. Let me put it in Edu class, sorry, Edu resource group itself, and then the name, let it be my service. Okay, test service. You can give any name. Should be meaningful name. Let it be my test service 2. And then I want to publish a code. The runtime is .NET 8. That's what we usually do, right? So the same web app, okay, you can think of it like this. So you have a web application code, and the same web application code we are deploying to both the app services so that the same service is load balanced by this particular global load balancer. And then this time I'll just go and use East US. Think I have permission to create. Yeah, okay, fine. Then let's say review, create, and create. It looks the first web app got created already, and validation passed. Let me also create this one. So what we have done so far in our demo, the first step is over. We created two web app, and for both the web app, let's imagine that we have deployed our web application code just like that. Now this web application will be accessed through front door so that the application content can be served to the end user with less latency. So for that, we need to create this front door, and that's our second step. Let's go and do that. Okay, there is some error. What is this? Maybe I'm not having permission to create it in East US. So instead of East US, let me create my app in other region. Let me go and put it in ADU. Name is, let it be my service, my test service 2, code runtime.NET 8, and then the Windows. Let me go to Southeast Asia. Let's put it over here, Southeast Asia, and then that's it. So let me just say review, create, and create. Okay, meanwhile, let me duplicate one more page. So this is web app 1, and this is going to be web app 2. And then here, let's go and search for front door. Let me once again verify, yeah, the deployment is submitted. Okay, fine. So instead of waiting, let me just go and search for front door. And if you see on front door, you get two things like it's load balancing. It has the capability to load the balance. Okay, and then the content delivery. So it can balance the load, not load the balance. It can balance the load, and it can also deliver the content. So both the functionalities it can do. Now let's go and create our first front door. An Azure front door. And I'm not going to use custom create. I'll just go and use this quick create option and say create a front door profile. Let it be in my subscription, the resource group to be Edu. So obviously, if this resource group belongs to Central US, even the front door's metadata gets stored in Central US. If it is East US, East US, and then, so it purely depends upon your resource group. That Region will be chosen for storing the metadata about the front door, what I'm going to create. Let's give it a name. Front door for my test service. So the tier, there are two different tiers we have. If you want to go for advanced, then we go for premium. But for this demo, I'll keep it standard. Endpoint name. Let me give an endpoint name here. Front door, my service, my test service. Okay, fine. And then the origin type. What is this origin type? So we have two origin and both are of app services, right? So that's the origin type. So it's an app service. And similarly, you have other origin types also. You can go for application gateway. You can even go for public IP addresses. And then you also can go and add a storage account if in case you are hosting a static website using Azure storage account, then we can choose that. But for our demo, we have to use this app services. And then once I choose app services, okay, now both the web apps are created. And you can see that both what I have created is listed here. So for time being, I'll choose one. And later after creating this front door, I will add another one. Okay, if I want, I can even enable caching. Okay, so if I enable caching, then the caching behavior must be selected here. So you can choose any one among them. Let's say that ignore specified or use query string, fine. And if I want, I can even bring in a web application firewall for my web application. So we can even bring in this WAF. It will filter if there is any SQL injection error, or it can even withstand DDoS attack also. But I'm not going to use any web application policy here. So, and I'll say tags nothing and say review, create and create. Right now, I just added only one backend service or origin. After creation, I need to add the other backend as well. And once done, then we also get a fully qualified domain name, and that will be distributed among all our application user. So users will be hitting that FQDN, then the content will be delivered to the user. I need to wait for some more time. Yes, the resource, which is called front door, got created already. It took around 2 to 3 minutes. Let me get inside the resource. Origin group, we just added only one service, right? Let's go and add another one. Okay. So for this, I need to add one more host name, add an origin. Here, let it be, it's again an app service. Origin type, you can give app service one or whatever it is. Origin type is app services. Host name, I have already used one. Let me know what is that I have used so that the rest I can use. So my service name is already added. Let me just go and add another one. Origin type app service. My test service too. And this is an app service itself. And rest all I'm just leaving default and say add. Once this another host name or the app service, if it is added, then we can just go and access this front door. As I said, this front door will be giving me an endpoint. That's a fully qualified domain name. We need to distribute this to the user. Yes, this looks weird. The user cannot remember this particular DNS name. So what we can do, we can go and have our own custom domain name. That's possible. So origin group will be having multiple origin host. So in this demo, I had only two. I added both. If you're having multiple host, origin host, then you need to add all of them. So users of this particular service will access this particular, yeah. So it's working. Maybe it is getting the request from one of the origin host. Another one is still getting updated. So once it is updated, then again, depends upon the user request, which is the nearest service or origin host, and that origin host will be requested by the front door.